Welcome to The State of Us.
Beyond mainstream cable news and party lines, with a millennial and a boomer, The State of Us pushes past the noise and uncovers all the issues that matter.
Here's your host, Justin T. Weller.
As one of the largest pharmacy chains and wholesale drug distributors in the country, Walmart had the responsibility and the means to help prevent the diversion of prescription opioids. Instead, for years, it did the opposite, filling thousands of invalid prescriptions at its pharmacies and failing to report suspicious orders of opioids and other drugs placed by those pharmacies. That's a quote from Jeffrey Clark, who was the acting assistant attorney general of the Justice Department Civil Division, and he said that back in December of 2020. The Wall Street Journal goes on to point out the lawsuit is a significant escalation in the government's effort to hold major pharmacy chains responsible for their role in the opioid crisis. While much of the litigation around opioid addiction has focused on doctors and distributors, a lawsuit filed in federal court in May by two Ohio counties accused CVS, Walgreens, and Rite Aid of also fueling the problem. The retailers were accused of selling millions of pills in tiny communities, rewarding pharmacists with the highest volumes and promoting opioids as safe and effective. Wow, we've got some stuff to talk about today. What's going on here? Should pharmacies be held accountable for the opioid crisis? That's part of what we're going to look at. We're also going to look at the larger issue of drugs that we classify as legal and illegal. But no conversation on pharmaceuticals and Big Pharma and Walmart would be complete without
True Chat senior historian and an educator of more than 30 years. Here is your friendly redneck liberal, Lance Jackson.
Well, folks, I'm going to try to keep it under control. The pre-show meeting got me all fired up, so we'll try to stay on task and follow Justin today. Word of the day. It's kind of interesting, a little history here, using my famous 1984 published Webster's New World Dictionary, second college edition. Looked up the word opioid, and it does not contain it. It's one of those lessons on how language develops and changes throughout time. And so it's kind of interesting in that aspect. So I chose the word opiate or opiate. It has both pronunciations, O-P-I-A-T. And we'll use the second definition, anything tending to quiet, soothe, or deaden. Okay. Used as an adjective, but interesting that, to this reader, that the word opioid is not found, in this dictionary from 1984. So again, the changing of language in our history and in our time. Yeah. Many issues here. Number one, Big Pharma and how they tell you what you can do. And if you're a purveyor of television like I am and you watch the old shows, and so you get all the old medicine commercials on there, it's funny to listen to or to them read the list of things that might happen to you if you take this drug that is supposed to help you. And I just love how the pharmaceutical companies, this product is great for lowering your A1C or your blood pressure or your this, but it could cause this, even death. And it's like, oh, great. What can we do that's healthy for us that where the drug that we take to do something for us isn't deadly in some instances. I mean, it's amazing how many pills we pop and how many drugs we take in our mouth because pharmaceutical companies and doctors say this will help you. Now, here's the whole list of side effects and let us know if these things happen because these are really bad. But, we can't use holistic medicine and we can't take the things that the Native Americans and the people for centuries, the plants that they knew to take to heal everything from headaches to stomach aches. No, we have to take a pharmaceutical pill because these other things are called illegal drugs and we can't take them because the government says it's bad. So we have to pay money to Big Pharma so that we can take all these other drugs that they create for us that have these horrible side effects. But other than that, I'm ready for a good show, Justin. So what's first?
Well, if our listeners would like to read this article for themselves, they can find it linked at thestateofus.org. But we also would like to hear from you as we go through today's show. There's a wide range of opinion here on these topics, and I'm sure that people are going to differ on each segment of the show too, because there's a few, as Lance pointed out, there's a few different things here to talk about. Each one has some nuances. We'd like to hear from you. Send us an email at podcast@thestateofus.org. So the email is podcast@thestateofus.org.
Hey, I'm just trying to relate my inner President Biden about being transparent.
Okay.
So I just wanted people to know.
Are you channeling that? You got the white hair
I'm
going.
I'm trying to channel my inner President Biden and being fully transparent from the get-go.
So as the article continues, it says the following: some of these big companies defended their actions by saying the responsibility to vet these prescriptions lies primarily with the physician, not the pharmacy. On Tuesday, Walmart made a similar argument, saying the Justice Department was forcing retailers to, quote, second-guess doctors and, quote, putting pharmacists and pharmacies between a rock and a hard place with state health regulators who say they are already going too far in refusing to fill opioid prescriptions. But the Justice Department officials say that for years, Walmart willfully looked the other way when presented with, quote, glaringly obvious red flags, end quote. So this is part of what makes this complicated, Lance, right? Because on one hand, Walmart's statement is not unreasonable, right? They're saying, look, we're the pharmacy, okay? And not our job to decide, not primarily our job to decide whether or not we should give somebody a prescription. Our job is to fill prescriptions that are valid. And that's then the second part of this, right, that becomes the complicated part. And basically the part that the Justice Department is saying, this is where we blame Walmart. They were handed these prescriptions that to any sensible person who received basic training would have questioned and could have taken extra steps to go through the process of confirming that these were valid prescriptions. And they did not do that. And in fact, there's good precedent here, is what they're saying, to show that people who did not question and people who filled the most prescriptions are the ones that received the promotions inside of some of these pharmacies at Walmart, Rite Aid, Walgreens, and others. So it's to say not only were they looking the other way, they were maybe not explicitly rewarded for doing so, but again, it doesn't take a genius to draw the lines between, okay, these people, right, these pharmacies are filling more prescriptions in communities where there's not even enough, right, there's not even enough residents in the communities. There were several cases that were brought forward where the number of pills exceeded the number of residents in a given community.
There were 100 pills for every resident in the small town,
right,
where the prescriptions were being filled. Yeah. Everybody had 100
exactly.
On average.
It's like, it doesn't take a rocket scientist here to say something doesn't add up here. There's no way that 12,000 people need 20,000 pills every month, or this community needs some serious medical attention if that's the type of consumption that's underway.
And if you've listened to this show for more than a year, then you know this already. But again, being fully transparent, you know, the friendly redneck liberal there's no love lost for Walmart. Cannot stand what they've done to small town America. And I am probably a very longer time Walmart shopper, other than for the last 10 years than most people, because when I was 10, I lived in the Ozark Mountain region of southern Missouri, and we were the first to get a Walmart. That's where Walmart began, folks, down in northern Arkansas. It's where Bentonville is, and southern Missouri. And so I got my school jeans when I was living in Ohio and going to visit grandma in August. That's where my school clothes. That was the cheapest place we could buy them, was Walmart. So shopped Walmart for a long time, but Walmart has turned into where they attack small towns and small businesses in small towns. And this is just another case in point. But I don't have the anger with Walmart. Believe it or not, this is a case where I think that the government is looking for a scapegoat, and Walmart's the scapegoat. The problem is, and we talked about this off air, we don't have laws. Did Walmart break a law? You know, should they be able to fill all of this? Should they be? Of course, all of that I think is obvious. But is there a law that Walmart broke? Is this something that we've let slip through the cracks? Granted, it is a huge problem, particularly in rural America. I would say all over America, but particularly in rural America has been hit very hard with this opioid crisis. Why didn't you do the job, FDA or whomever, to go after these doctors that were writing prescriptions for patients that didn't exist, or writing 10 prescriptions when there should have only been 1 or 2 prescriptions per year for the amount of pills that they were giving these people? So I look at this as, I'm not a Walmart fan at all, but I think we are in a sense going after Walmart in this case, just because we need somebody to go after, and they're the big bad bear in the room. And, we ought to go after them for a lot of things. I'm not sure this one is the right one.
What Lance and I take issue with for the most part on this, and the whole issue, the opioid crisis in general, is the levels of hypocrisy that are at play, right? Okay. It's not to say that there aren't people that need and use responsibly opioids, right? And even if they don't use them responsibly, that's part of what we're going to talk about in the next segment. Not necessarily our place to judge them. It's also not to say that there's not a lot of great doctors out there and healthcare professionals who are not incorrectly prescribing things, who are truly trying to take the best interest of their patients into account. We are talking about, and this is important to understand, the fringe cases. To Lance's point, these fringe cases impact and are near and dear to us because they most often impact those disadvantaged communities, whether that's small rural communities or impoverished communities in big inner cities. These are the places that these mega companies prey on and take advantage of. And that's what we're taking issue with. And I think that's the important thing to keep in mind, because the issue of drugs, and that's part of what we're going to talk about in the next segment here, that's kind of a different conversation, right? Particularly right now, with everything going on in the world and some of the anti-vax sentiment going on. It would be easy to make certain leaps with what we're saying, but to get the specifics, you'll have to keep it here on The State of Us, and we'll be right back.
We are The State of Us. Here's your host, Justin T. Weller.
To what extent does it seem believable that a company like Walmart would intentionally prey on rural communities in the name of making money and big pharma, right? That's some of what we've talked about in the first segment so far. It seems, Lance, that based on a lot of what is available to us, right, that the Justice Department has some level of case. Now, the question becomes, as always, right, can they improve that there was intent here by Walmart? In other words, was this willful, or was it merely all coincidental? We shared with listeners that it's no secret that you definitely have some animosity for Walmart. I would say that I do as well. And I think it's fair to say that our producer does, having some interesting firsthand experience there with the organization. So all of those things culminate, though, to say that we all buy things at Walmart. And that's because in places like our community, you're often left with little choice unless you want to drive 45 minutes to some other place. And in a lot of rural communities, folks, it's not 45 minutes, it's 2 or 3 hours. You know, it's the closest place that you can buy the thing that you want to buy is Walmart. And so I think we have to weigh all of that when we're thinking about, they're both in a position to do it. Some of it is going to be inherent when you run an organization like that. Did they want to push all the small businesses out of business? Yes, no. They did either way, right? I mean, that's kind of at the end of the day. And so when we transition to talking about the drug situation, Lance, I think this is where we have to be careful, right? Because it gets sticky for people. They're going to say, well, you're saying that all pharmaceuticals are bad, right? You should don't listen to doctors, don't take pills, don't trust the government because it's all a hoax, it's all a lie. They're just drugging you up so that they can tell you what to do. I mean, and there's a difference between what we're trying to convey and that sentiment, right?
Oh, very much so. You're exactly correct. Because if you go down there, I mean, I take 5 pills every day prescribed by my doctor, who said if I don't take them, I die. So I'm taking them, but I do research and I read about them and I know what I'm putting in there. But there are things that now I'm trying to do because I read, and it's like, okay, these drugs are safe. I haven't had the side effects and I have my blood drawn and do all those things I'm supposed to do. But there are healthier versions of things that we can do. And there are times when we don't even ask for them or when our doctors don't even offer them to us. Now, I will say that my medical professional that I go to, the reason I've chosen him is because he left the system. He didn't like the system. He didn't like all the paperwork that accepting government patients made him do. So he went into practice where you just pay him a flat fee. And I have access to him 24/7, and he'll even make house calls. And it doesn't cost me any more. It costs me $40 a month to have that access. So it's not like, oh, yeah, but you're rich, so you can go out there and pay for it. $40 a month? That's pretty cheap to have access to a healthcare professional at my whim. And I talk to him all the time. Are there things that I can do so that I don't have to take these pills? And he tells me. And some of those things I'm trying to do now so that I can get off of some of those pills. And that's where I think we need to work hand in hand with our physician. We've talked about it before. I've said on multiple occasions, yeah, doc, I don't want to take this pill. He goes, that's fine. I said, well, what would have happened in Old West days when these pills weren't created and I had this illness? He goes, well, you'd be dead. Okay. I mean, I appreciate his frankness. So, I'm not saying that you don't take the pills, that there's not a place for them. I'm lucky, in our state, they are vaccinating educators, and in some school districts, and I got in line and have my first dose, and I'm grateful, and I'm supposed to get my second dose in the next week and a half. So no, I'm not talking about any that kind of stuff at all, because there is a place for it. But all I'm saying is that we need to be informed. And we talk about that all the time with whatever episode we're doing in this show. Be an informed citizen. Inform yourself about what's going on. Then make the best decision for you and your loved ones. And that's all I'm saying when I'm talking about this. Just be informed. And because the more information you can get, and I'm talking about real information.
That's exactly where I was headed. Yeah.
Because we have to be careful. I'm teaching young people, and I have middle school kids who are telling me the internet is the most trusted, most reliable place to get their news. While it's driving me crazy, it's driving home the point of the situations we're in as a nation now. Because if these middle school children are saying this, where are they getting that? From their caregivers, from their parents or grandparents. According to those people that they're living in those roofs, that's where they're getting the most reliable news, they think. And they don't understand the difference between a .org and a .com and a .edu. And they were flabbergasted when I said, you can make your own website and put anything on it that you want and put it on the internet and people can read it. They go, what? And I said, so just because you type it into this, whatever search engine you use, and we won't even get into that. We did that in another episode.
Yeah.
You'll find somebody who says something about it, but does that mean it's reliable? And we need to work on that, folks. That's what I'm talking about. You have to have a physician that you trust, do reliable research, and find out what's out there, and then make the best decision for you and your loved ones.
The first question when somebody says something to me that I find to be surprising, I'm not even saying unbelievable, just, like, wow, that's interesting. If that's true, I'm glad that I've learned that, and if it's not true, we definitely don't want to be saying that, because that would be dangerous to spread that information. First thing is I ask them, well, do you remember where you heard that? Maybe you wouldn't be amazed, but I'm sure our listeners have experienced this as well. I am constantly, just struck by how many people, I'm not, I don't really remember where I heard that. And it's like, so then why are you telling other people? Why have you decided that you can believe this and that you're going to go disseminate the information?
As a point of fact.
Right. And you can't even remember where you heard it, and I be the first person to say, I forget, some of that stuff sometimes, but that's why before I go around, telling people that, I'm going to be very confident that I've received the information from a place that is trustworthy. And what is trustworthy? The reason that Lance and I take well, I guess Lance and I don't take the time. The reason that we tell our producers to take the time to link the articles that we use on the show is in an effort of being transparent and allowing you to go read it for yourself. And I think we constantly tell you, go do that, and you may come away with something different. Don't just take us at face value. And the other thing is the healthcare point. I think there's something valuable to be said there. I trust my primary care physician to an extent, right? I don't think that she's intentionally out to get me, to try to get me to do things that are bad for my health. I think she's trying to do stuff that she thinks is best for me. At the same time, being married to somebody that's in healthcare, Lance, has family that's in healthcare. I think the point there is that you also get sensitive to the fact that there's different opinions in healthcare, and that it might be smart to take some time to see, well, what's the consensus, right, of the community? Not what can I find that one doctor somewhere with some PhD says, right? Or some MD or whatever. Because to Lance's point, you can find somebody with something that'll say anything.
And it says what I want to hear. So see, now it's okay.
Right.
Now it's validated.
Right.
No, that's not the point at all. The point is, like you said, I like that word consensus. What's the consensus out there? What are most of them saying? Because they're probably on the right track. And then when they say things to you like, well, no, you don't have to take this, but this is what's going to happen to you. Those are the people I tend to trust.
If you are working with a medical professional that makes you feel uncomfortable, like they are telling you that you must do this or you must do that, doesn't mean that they're necessarily a bad person, but you should find somebody that doesn't make you feel that way. They may be stern with you and they may be very straight with you and they may say things like, well, you'll die if you don't take it, but they should not ever make you feel like you're being, pressured, so to speak, to do something. Because at the end of the day, and I think that's where Lance and I come down on a lot of this, it's your health. The challenge becomes, especially in these times, that whole where your health can impact other people's health. You have the right to do things with your own life. You don't have the right to, at least not in our country, to, wrongfully endanger other people.
What my family members who are in healthcare have told me, that you as the patient need to advocate for yourself. You need to make your healthcare people slow down and listen to you and talk to you and treat you holistically. And if you can't find that, then I think you need to be looking somewhere else. There are good physicians out there who will do those kinds of things for you. And if we all advocate for ourselves, that will force them to do that.
I know a lot of people, and I'd be the first to tell some that I am one of them sometimes. I mean, I think I've been caught saying this. You don't like to go to the doctor because they're going to find something wrong. What if we reframed, I'm going to go to the doctor to ask them, what can I do to make sure the next time I come back, you don't find more stuff that's wrong, right? In other words, shifting the focus. And I know there's a push from the professional healthcare community to do more of this, to prevention, right, as opposed to treatment. And you might say, well, why are we talking about all this, right, in relation to the opioid crisis? Well, because that's where a lot of this stems from, right? It's the treatment culture that has been developed. Well, you have a problem, we're going to treat it, as opposed to, well, how do we prevent the problem?
Remember our definition: to deaden. Of an opiate, to deaden. So you have pain. Here, this will get rid of the pain.
Well, it will deaden the pain. I think it's an important distinction though, because that's something that we don't do enough. And you and I have started, I think, this more with the word of the day of, it may sound like semantics, but really understand, right, that most opioids, the way they function is not removing pain. They're merely removing your perception of the pain. So it's still there. You are still in pain. You just don't know that you're in pain, right? You're either blocking the pain from being relayed to you consciously, or in some cases, you're just simply deadening it, right? You're actually intaking enough of other types of sensories that you are no longer experiencing or consciously as aware of your pain. That's where, when we're framing this conversation and why we're taking time in this second segment to talk about that bigger issue with how we're looking at medicine and how we talk about these things. And that's where Walmart, Big Pharma, that's where they see those openings and those opportunities to prey on us. As long as you're going to have that sort of culture, then there's an opportunity for things like this to exist. So where should the law lie? what should the letter of the law be when it comes to these things? That's exactly what we're going to answer coming up. Keep it here on The State of Us. We'll be right back.
We are The State of Us. Here's your host, Justin T. Weller.
These conversations are valuable in part because we participate in trying to openly and honestly explore the different sides of these issues, and that's why we want you to engage with us. Send us an email, podcast@thestateofus.org, podcast@thestateofus.org. We've talked about Walmart, the specifics there, some of the greater issues in healthcare, right? The prevention versus treatment mentality. And there's a place for both. And I think the problem is that we focus too much on one of them, or at least I know Lance and I feel that way. As someone who's spent a little time in healthcare, as someone who's spent some time working for these mega corporations, how does our producer feel about where the letter of the law should be on all these illegal and legal substances, both opioids and illegal drugs currently? In other words, is the law in a good place? Does the law need to be less strict, more strict? What do you think?
I think with mostly prescription medications, the law needs to be way more strict, because I feel like that a lot of patients aren't really being evaluated enough to be on those for the long amounts of times that they are, as they are very addictive. So I don't really think that patients are being considered in some aspects. So I think it should be like reeled in a little bit, but like definitely not enough to like hinder people that are in pain. Talking about illegal drugs, I mean, there's only one illegal drug that I would say would be the most beneficial for pain relief, and that would, of course, be marijuana. So that would be the only one I think we could loosen up on, and I think that would cut down the opioid crisis here in the United States by a lot.
Should marijuana be prescribed?
I mean, it already is.
Well, I'm asking more, I guess, in the esoteric sense of the way it should be. In other words, should I be able to drive into town and just pick it up just because I want it? Or should I have to see a doctor who says, no, you need this? Or is there different levels? I mean, for example, right, I can go right now, I can drive down the street and I can pick up a bottle of ibuprofen. Okay. I don't need anybody's permission or blessing or nothing. If I have the money, I can go buy it and I can take it. And it might be the most awful thing for me, but I can do it. At the same time, if I want, instead of 200 milligram pills of ibuprofen, if I want 800 milligram pills of ibuprofen, I need a prescription for that. So there is a place between, right, strictly prescription and strictly not. But I guess that's what I'm asking is what you're suggesting, that it just be, you can get it whether you need it or not. You know, hypothetically, I could just go get ibuprofen just because I want to. You know, I may not need it per se, but I could also go get a prescription for it. So should it be one of those situations?
I think it should be kind of like a combination, as you're mentioning the ibuprofen, because like I think there should be higher doses for patients that get the prescription, and obviously that should be covered by insurance. Whereas if we open it up for like recreational use as well, we can have that and make it cheaper for patients that need it. Whereas like that's where we could use it for tax dollars and everything for recreational people, and also like have a little bit lower doses, or like minimize how much they can buy at a given time, like for a certain period of time. So that way we know they're not distributing it or anything like that, as we're seeing with the opioid crisis.
Well, let's hit closer to home. We talk about damage done to families and to our society. We have a drug that's readily available for anyone over the age of 18 or 21, I think, in the majority of the United States, that we allow people to buy, that we just got done watching the most watched TV show in America with the Super Bowl that's advertised. And how many family members do we know who self-medicate with alcohol and who've had their lives ruined with it? So what's to say, why are we saying, well, it's okay to self-medicate with alcohol? And we'll even have some of the best commercials on TV come from these companies, and there's no repercussion. There's no warning signs that are listed at all And yet we all have family members who have self-medicated or who are currently self-medicating with alcohol on a daily basis. And yet that's legal. But let's cut to the chase. Why are some of these drugs okay and others are taboo?
Is the solution then that there is no legal and illegal drugs?
Is it, or you outlaw all of them? And I know, I'm that history person. I know we tried to outlaw alcohol, and contrary to most popular opinions, less alcohol was drunk in the United States during Prohibition because most people obey the law, but we weren't willing to pay the price of law enforcement to do it. And there was pushback for the economic reasons as well as, well, it's my body. I have the right to. That argument is not new. And when you talk about that, everybody says, well, but there's a difference between drinking alcohol and smoking dope. Yeah. The difference, if you look at the medical studies, you're less likely to get addicted to marijuana. Marijuana is not a gateway drug. I mean, I'm sorry, folks, if you actually want to read the medical documents and take that consensus that you've talked about before and not take what pharmaceutical companies, the health studies are there. We ignore them and we allow alcohol and we don't allow marijuana. The hypocrisy just drives me crazy. But I'm sick and tired of the hypocrisy of the government saying, here, you can go ruin your life and your family with this, but you can't with this.
Right.
I'm just for equality, man. I'm just for libertarianism in the fact that it should be my choice. Once I then cross the line and affect other people, then you have the right to do something to stop me.
The problem that we run into so many times, I think, Lance, with these things, or the problem that other people run into and that big media runs into, is they don't want to talk about things that involve nuance, right? Because what they want to do is they want to put Lance on the air. They want to take what he just said and then not let him add the caveat about, well, when you cross the line and you hurt other people, because that now we start to get complicated, and now people, they're too stupid. They wouldn't understand what that means, So in other words, what they want to do is they want to say, well, Lance, he thinks that people should be able to take any drug, anywhere, anytime, and do anything they want. That's what he thinks. He's a kooky. Look at him. That's what he wants. And it's like, no, that's not where I'm at. I mean, you were headed there, Lance, and that's exactly what I was going to say is, generally speaking, my philosophy is I don't want to be reliant on anything that I don't absolutely need to function, right? I don't want to be reliant for things to function at all. But I accept that there are certain things that I am reliant on in order to function. We all have them. You just have to figure out what they are, whether they're drugs or otherwise, right? That's like to say, people, that debate that goes back and forth on marijuana constantly. Is it addictive? Is it not addictive? It's like, yes, to both. You can get addicted to anything, literally anything. There are people that are addicted to some things that we would find crazy and insane, like red buildings. That may sound nuts that somebody could be addicted to red buildings. What does that mean? It means that it controls their life in some way, right? Okay, that they are reliant.
Well, they can be addicted to the pharmaceuticals that are in their cabinet right now, that their doctor prescribed for them, that society says is legal.
So the point is, that can happen with pretty much anything. If it exists, you can probably be addicted to it in some way or another. Now, there are things that we know, right, definitively are more addictive than other things, more likely for someone to become addicted to. At the end of the day, I don't want to rely on anything at all, to alter my state of being beyond just generally what it would be with or without other substances. At the same time, I come very much down on that side of that's me and my body. And I don't think I have any more right to tell somebody what they can or can't do with theirs than I can or than I would want them to tell me to do with mine. And that's where the caveat comes in when it crosses over the line of impacting other people. You want to smoke marijuana? Fine. Should you be allowed to do that and go out and drive if you're high? No. Just like we don't let, it's illegal to drive with a certain blood alcohol content. Why? Because you're going to endanger the lives of other people. I don't think we do that enough for what it's worth with drugs. We have alcohol, we have a couple other things, but then there's all these legal prescription drugs. And it's like, oh my gosh, some of these things say don't operate heavy machinery, but it's not illegal for me to go drive a vehicle. Are you crazy? Some of those are going to make me more dangerous than a couple drinks are going to make me. So doesn't mean that a couple drinks aren't dangerous, right? And maybe you disagree with us. And if you do, we'd definitely like to hear from you, because I think it's important that you share your thoughts with us. But that's, I think, what it comes down to is there's some nuance in this, right? There's a difference between saying everything should be legal, no holding back, no restrictions, just, everybody fight for themselves and we'll see what happens. It's like, no, that's not what we're saying. But we're also saying that there's a much better place to be than where we're at right now. One that will present less opportunity for, I think, people to be preyed upon. And the other, just last caveat, Lance, is the education component of this stuff. Because one thing that I could hear listeners saying, and they'd be absolutely right, a lot of times these quote unquote illegal substances unfairly impact, or disproportionately rather impact, communities that have lowered levels of educational attainment. People choose these substances not really understanding the full implication of them. And just like we said in the second segment, right, with talking to your primary care physician and et cetera, same thing here. We need to make sure that people have access to the clear information to make the decisions. And if they want to make the decisions, that's their decision, right? But if you make a decision with only 1/4 of the information, it not really necessarily fair to say that you have all the information you need. But that's kind of what we're about here on the show, Lance, right? Is trying to give people the information to have the conversation that's necessary to listen to what we've got to say, because we have a common mission here at this company.
Right. And we're just, a couple of people who are discussing the topics and hopefully getting your brain to start thinking about it. And so we can all have this conversation. And I appreciate True Chat allowing us to do that. But exactly, our mission statement here is to educate people by providing honest, open, and respectful conversations. And again, we've done that. We don't claim to have all the answers. We do claim to have studied it and read it a little bit more, but we're open, just because these are ideas that we have at this point in our lives doesn't mean that we're not open to changing them if we find other things that prove to be better than what we've thought of. And that's why we take the show to you, the listener, so that we can hear what you have to say. And we've been known to change our minds before. But if you like that concept and you enjoy the show and it does make you think, that's what we're trying to do, is to make you stop and think a little bit. And you'd like to share that with others, tell them they can listen to us as well. They can find us on Spotify, Overcast, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, and everywhere podcasts are found. So as a podcast, that's how you find us. Listen to us, get the conversation started, because we're all better off the more talking that's done. The more we can talk among ourselves and each other and across groups and across generations, the better society we can develop.
The podcast is released new episodes Tuesdays and Thursdays every week by 4 a.m. Eastern Time. The radio show can be heard on select talk markets throughout the country, so be sure to check your local station, see if they carry us. If they don't, call them up and tell them they should. For the State of Us in Urbana, Ohio, I'm Justin T. Weller.
I'm Lance Jackson.
Special thanks to our recording producer, Devin McCain, editing producer, Bradley Bush, and thank you all, our audience, for tuning in. We'll see you next time. Be the change. Be sure to check out our website, thestateofus.org, for books, articles, and all the ways to tune in. thestateofus.org.